There has been a lot of renewed attention recently around the idea of a possible $2,000 stimulus connected to comments made by Donald Trump, and I want to take my time today to explain exactly what was said, why people are talking about it again, and what it realistically means. If you've seen headlines or short clips that made it sound like a $2,000 check is already approved or about to be sent out, this video is especially important because right now there is a big difference between discussion and decision, and understanding that difference can save you a lot of confusion and frustration. Let's start with the number itself, $2,000. That number immediately gets attention. For many people, especially those living on fixed incomes or dealing with rising costs, a payment like that would make a meaningful difference. It could help with rent or a mortgage. It could help with groceries. It could help with utilities, prescriptions, or credit card balances, so it's completely understandable why people pay attention when they hear that number mentioned. But it's very important to say this clearly right from the beginning. There is no approved $2,000 stimulus payment. There is no signed legislation, and there is no official payment schedule. What exists right now are comments, discussions, and reactions to recent statements. So let's talk about what was actually said. Recently, Donald Trump made comments referencing economic pressure, affordability concerns, and the idea that Americans are struggling under the current cost of living. In those comments, he spoke broadly about the importance of putting money back into people's pockets and helping everyday Americans deal with rising prices. Those statements quickly sparked renewed online discussion about stimulus payments. People began connecting those comments to the idea of a $2,000 stimulus, even though no specific payment was announced. This is where confusion often starts. Political statements often signal priorities or viewpoints. They do not automatically translate into policy. They do not automatically mean checks are coming, and they do not mean legislation has been written. Now let's talk about why this conversation keeps resurfacing again and again. Whenever inflation, tariffs, taxes, or economic pressure are discussed, the idea of direct payments comes up. People remember previous stimulus payments. They remember how those payments helped during difficult economic periods. So when leaders talk about helping Americans financially, many people immediately think of checks. That reaction makes sense, but it's also where speculation can take over. Now let's slow this down and talk about what would actually be required for a $2,000 stimulus payment to happen. First, a bill would need to be written and introduced in Congress. Second, that bill would need to be debated, amended, and passed by both chambers of Congress. Third, it would need to be signed into law. Only after all of that would agencies begin setting up payments. None of those steps have happened. There is currently no bill guaranteeing a $2,000 stimulus payment. Now let's talk about expectations, because this is where a lot of disappointment comes from. When people hear strong language about helping Americans financially, it's easy to assume something immediate is coming. But historically, stimulus payments only happen under very specific circumstances. They usually occur during major economic crises or emergencies, and even then they take time to implement. So it's important not to assume that comments alone mean checks are on the way. Now let's talk about eligibility, because this is another area where speculation gets out of control. If a stimulus payment were ever proposed, Congress would still need to decide who qualifies. Would it be per individual or per household? Would there be income limits? Would retirees qualify? Would people receiving Social Security, SSI, or SSDI be included automatically? Would dependents receive payments? Right now, none of these questions have answers, because there is no bill. Until eligibility rules exist in writing, no one can accurately say who would receive money. Now let's talk about timing, because this is another point where expectations often don't match reality. Even if a stimulus proposal were introduced tomorrow, checks would not arrive quickly. The legislative process takes time. Debates happen, amendments happen, votes happen, then implementation begins. That process takes months, not weeks. There is no realistic scenario where checks suddenly appear without advance notice. If something real were moving forward, you would see very clear signs. Public votes. Official announcements, clear timelines. None of that exists right now. Now let's talk about how this would relate to Social Security, because this question comes up constantly. A stimulus payment would be completely separate from Social Security. It would not replace your monthly benefit, it would not reduce your monthly benefit, and it would not permanently increase your monthly benefit. Stimulus payments, when they happen, are temporary measures. Social Security is a long-term program with its own rules and funding. That distinction is especially important for retirees and people on fixed incomes. Now, let me pause here for a moment. If you appreciate calm, honest explanations like this and you want updates without hype or panic, consider subscribing. I'm trying my best to explain what's actually happening so you can stay informed without being misled. Now, let's continue. Another reason this topic keeps gaining attention is because economic pressure is still very real. Housing costs remain high. Healthcare costs continue to rise. Food prices are higher than many people expected. Insurance costs are up. Utilities are expensive. So when leaders talk about economic relief, it resonates deeply. But not every idea becomes policy. Not every comment becomes a check. Now let's talk about what you should do right now. The most important thing is not to plan your finances around a potential stimulus. Until something is officially approved, it should be treated as uncertain. Your current income, including Social Security or other benefits, is what you should plan around. Any possible stimulus should be viewed as a possibility, not a guarantee. Now, let me speak honestly. I know this can feel exhausting. You see big numbers, you hear strong statements, and then nothing happens for a long time. That frustration is completely understandable. I'm trying my best to separate real updates from speculation, so you're not left guessing. Now, let's bring everything together. Here's where things stand right now. Donald Trump made comments about economic pressure and the need to help Americans financially. Those comments sparked renewed discussion about a possible $2,000 stimulus. There is no approved payment. There is no legislation guaranteeing checks. There is no payment timeline. What exists right now is discussion, not decision. If that changes, it will be very clear. There will be official announcements, there will be legislation, and there will be timelines. Until then, staying informed without panic is the smartest approach. This channel exists to help you understand updates clearly, to focus on real information, and to separate confirmed news from speculation. If you want the latest updates as they happen, make sure you're subscribed. And when this video ends, click the video on your screen for the most current updates you need to know about. I'll see you there.